Hi, folks. Welcome to the Dennis Miller Show. I am the aforementioned Mr. Miller. In addition to the Lord Such, the grooviest lord, floating around Mary Quant's place, Chief Policy Advisor for Science and Public Policy Institute, one of my favorite guests, the erudite, literate Lord Christopher Monckton. Lord Monckton, how are you?
Well, Dennis, how very nice to hear the aforementioned Mr. Miller once again. It's always a pleasure to be on your entertaining show.
I love Lord Monckton. I always feel like I'm with a bright man who doesn't act like a swell when I'm with Lord Monckton. All right,
well,
baby,
I
tell me.
know perfectly well, Dennis, that you are on one knee, wearing white gloves, lying low and touching your forelock. So, of course, I shall be nice to you.
I'm merely a supplicant to your genius, Lord Monckton. For more information, by the way, on crowdfunding for the new documentary, Climate of Freedom, go to climatefreedom.com. Explain the new film, Lord Monckton.
Well, certainly, if you just put Indiegogo, Climate of Freedom, INDIEGOGO, Climate of Freedom, that is where you can help to crowdfund a new movie which we're planning to make over the next 6 months, getting it into theaters by September, October time, in time for the Christmas market.
Mm-hmm.
I've already talked to the guy who arranged for the distribution of The Passion of the Christ when none of the normal distributors would touch it because it was a Christian program and they didn't want to circulate it. He got it distributed anyway, and he has agreed similarly to come to our aid if the normal distributors try to say that there's only one story allowed on the climate. So we are hoping to get into your movie theater complex by the Christmas rush a new movie on the climate called Climate of Freedom, whose main point is going to be a very quick overview of the science and the economics of this nonsense, and then an indication of why they're doing this, because in Paris in December of this year, just months away, the UN is finally proposing to put in place a climate treaty, a world government treaty, very much along the lines of the one that it failed to get away with when it tried it rather too hastily at Copenhagen in 2009, having carelessly failed to square the Chinese. Well, now this time Mr. Obama has squared the Chinese by saying, well, we won't ask you to be bound by this treaty, but please sign it anyway.
I know. Amazing.
And of course the Chinese, for the sake of being agreeable, have consented to that on the clear understanding that they will not in any way be restricted in the amount of carbon dioxide emissions that they make. So we are going to make a film pointing out that democracy has 10 months to save itself, and that if it doesn't save itself, we could be in for a global climate communist tyranny.
The irony that the EPA has just said that Beijing's air has gone from creamy peanut butter to chunky peanut butter, and they won't have to be an adherent to any of this stuff, is just mind-boggling to me.
Well, this is very interesting. The EPA now beginning to look slightly over the end of its own nose to what is going on elsewhere. And, of course, the problem with the Chinese is that they're not using the modern methods of combustion of coal. You see, if you use circulating fluidized bed combustion, which was invented by a colleague of mine at Cambridge, that if you use the pelletized coal and if you use it finely granulated and you superheat it, then these new coal-fired boilers are 99% efficient. And that means, among other things, you get very little particulate matter going up out of the chimney. You'll still get CO2, but CO2 isn't a pollutant. It's plant food. And at the moment, its concentration to the nearest 0.1% in the atmosphere. Would you happen to know the figure, Dennis?
0.042?
That's pretty good. You're not far out. To the nearest 0.1%, there isn't any. That's how little of it there is, and that's why they're trying to claim that a very tiny alteration in what is already a very tiny quantity is somehow now going to have a major influence on the climate, even though we know that each new molecule of CO2 we emit to the atmosphere will have less warming effect than all of its predecessors. This, of course, is largely nonsense, as a recent paper that I published in the Chinese Science Bulletin of the Chinese Academy of Sciences explains. they've been using for decades an incorrect equation pinched from electronic circuitry and bolted unhappily onto the climate models where it doesn't belong. And it's that and that alone which produces these very extreme predictions of climate doom unless the West is shut down and communism triumphs worldwide. The fact is, none of this is necessary. Our paper demonstrates this, and it is the first of many papers by various authors, some of whom are not true believers in skepticism. Some of the people who are going to come up and support what we've been writing are people who until now have thought that there was a problem with the climate, and they now realize that there isn't.
Well,
so
they're nuts on that side, though.
Between the true science, which is now beginning to assert itself in the learned journals after peer review, and the bogus science, which has led to this climate communist conspiracy, for want of a better phrase.
Listen, the sequel to Fahrenheit 451 will be burning peer-reviewed journals. Let's face facts. These people are nuts, and it's going to take decades, if not centuries, of fighting back against them. And they'll never give up. Indeed, I think the more reports that come out that shoot holes in their theory, the more subconsciously mortified they'll feel, and the more they'll double down on these beliefs. I
think they will try, but I think that there is one professor in particular whom I am bidden not to name, who debated with this issue with me in front of a learned society somewhere in Europe. I have to be rather vague about this, a few years ago. And he at that time was taking the official standpoint. I mean, he's not a climate communist, he's a sensible researcher, but who, broadly speaking, had supported until now the official position. He heard what I had to say and was polite enough to say that he was concerned about some of the points I'd raised and would make further inquiries. He's been at it for the last 3 years and is now about to publish in a leading learned journal, and he is right up there among the top, originally the true believers in the climate scare. He's now saying that I've been right all along, and the amount of warming you will get from doubling CO2 in the atmosphere will be less. Get this, he says, less than 1 Celsius degree, and furthermore, that half of that will happen over the first 100 years. So we're looking at 0.5 Celsius degree of warming this century, about the same, a little bit less, if anything, than last century. And the remaining 0.5 won't even happen for another 300 or 400 years. So this would be the end of the scare, because if he's using the line of argument I suspect he's using, and he's being rather cagey, he'll probably be basing it in some degree on what we've based our argument on, which is this bogus equation. And if he says that equation is wrong, and he is the ranking expert among climate scientists on this particular equation, if he says it's the wrong equation, that is the end of the scare, and there will be no coming back from it.
Well, sounds like a big domino might fall.
We are now in the last stages of shutting this down, and that we may even do this before the Paris conference, which is going to make them look very stupid indeed.
10 months, the clock is ticking. Again, for more information on the Indiegogo campaign, that's INDIE GoGo campaign, go to climatefreedom.com. I think the Lord's looking to raise around 1.5 mil for this film. You can hear the clocks ticking, this summit in France in 10 months. And Doc, if somebody can't contribute financially, you have any advice for them on how they can also help you out here across some of the other social media?
And you kindly pass it on to me. That would be wonderful.
All right. Thank you, my friend. Good to talk to you, Lord Christopher Monckton.